Hey folks, welcome to another install guide and walkthrough for the Collateral Damage Sports Network plugin packages. This time we're going through the Pit Stops and Patchups plugin package, one of our oldest and most useful overlays to keep your race narrative as complete as possible for you and your audience. As always, you're going to take the zip file, throw it somewhere you know where to find, then open up your SDK settings. Find that overlay section, and then the plugins line, click in there, and then click the three-dot button. That will bring up your plugin manager. You're going to go down to the bottom left, click Import, find both the Pit Stat and the Repairs plugins, pull them in, and then under the Pit Stat plugin, go over to the Components tab, find that remote control component, Pit Stops and Patchups, and then come down to the bottom right and click Add to Remote Control. Hit OK, and you'll find that remote down in the bottom left of your remote panel. Alright, and I've got this race frozen because it's at a really good spot to showcase the differing strategies. So there's really two things available here, the pit stop stats and the repairs. And they both use some similar logic that all relies on these pit stop assumptions, and these are provided by you, the broadcaster, to match the series, the car, the track, the balance of power, the fuel capacity, whatever. You're going to need to do a little bit of work to figure this out because iRacing's API does not provide us with pit stop details like did this person take fuel 2 tires or 4 tires or need to make repairs for competition reasons. That data is not available, but you can infer it, especially as a broadcaster. What I would typically do is just look at that last pit stop time, and based on that I could pretty much guess what the stop was, especially in a NASCAR series with the trucks and the cups. And kind of the way I would walk through that is if I saw a stop that was 7 seconds or less, I was pretty sure that's a fuel-only stop in a NASCAR series, as a 2-tire stop typically takes around 11 seconds, 10 or 11, and a 4-tire stop typically takes around 14. And these change over time, so that's just, like I said, it's a setup for you to customize these assumptions to meet your needs. For cup and truck races, I usually use 8, 12, and 18 as my assumptions here, and so these are the number of seconds. What this means is that the plugin is going to look at the last pit stop time, and if it is under 8 seconds, it's going to label this as a fuel-only stop. Now, if you find that there's a better number, you just change it to whatever you need. If you're running a GT3 race, these numbers are going to be wildly different, and depending on the fuel capacity for that race, you might not quite be able to use this tool as accurately as you could for a NASCAR race, because a 2-tire stop and a fuel-only stop might take the exact same amount of time, which has been the case in some of the sprint races over in the road series. But again, this is, I think, primarily a NASCAR tool, but you can use it in endurance racing and road racing as well. Just keep in mind that if you run into a situation where the pit stop time doesn't help you know what type of stop it was, then this tool is not going to be perfectly accurate. But for a NASCAR, it's pretty darn helpful. And again, so anything between 8 and 12 seconds, the way I have this set up, is going to be considered a 2-tire stop. Anything between 12 and 18, a 4-tire stop. Now, I use 18 because I know when I'm driving and I make a stop, sometimes I'm grabbing water, sometimes I'm checking my phone. I'm not always gunning it out of the box right at 13.6 seconds or whatever a 4-tire stop and fuel is. So this just gives you a little bit of buffer before you label someone as having made repairs. I like to use 18. You can use whatever you want. So then we'll start with this pit stop stats side of the plugin. You also have a number of drivers to show. So this is going to be starting with the leader. And this can be helpful if you only have 8 cars on the lead lap. You might not care to look at the strategy of the lap down cars or whatever. Or if you know the battle is between the top 3, you can limit it to whatever. I usually use 10 or 15, and you can set that there. So let's pull it up. And there was just a caution a couple laps ago in this race. And so this snapshot gives you a whole bunch of information about who's on what strategy, how they got where they are, and whatever. So we take a look. Aiden here at the top, he did not pit under this caution with everyone else. So you can see basically the whole field pitted 1 lap ago. They're coming to the green right now. Aiden stayed out, and that's likely because he came in under a recent caution, had to make repairs just 12 laps ago. So you know he probably has 4 fresh tires. He had an extended pit stop previously, decided to stay out at this point in the race, and that's brought him to the lead. So that's narrative number 1. Number 2, you've got Craighead. He was most likely the leader coming in to the pits here. He took 4 tires, still came out first of everyone that pitted. He's probably going to be on offense to get back to the lead immediately. Right behind him, you have Michael Boyd. He used 2 tires to get to that position, so he probably leapfrogged a few of these drivers behind him, but he's not quite going to have the speed of Craighead in front of him or Thompson behind him. Same thing with Jonah Seawright in 6th. He went fuel only, and so you know he's going to be on defense. You also know, hey, he just saved a tire set, so later on in the race, you might want to remember that. Seawright has an extra set of tires. He didn't burn them up like everyone else. Then coming down to the bottom, you can see Gallman and Chapman had both just made extensive repairs. That's pushed them to the back of the field. There's actually only, I think 15 cars on the track at this time, so you know they're in the back. And then Wyville is the only driver that came down and topped off on fuel after just coming to the green flag. So he's going to have a slight advantage on fuel on this next run, especially if this were close to the end of the race. So there's just a ton of information you can glean from this lap since last pit and this pit stop type and kind of where people are lined up. I love this information. It really paints a picture for what the strategy is and who's going to be hunting who when they go back green flag racing. The other side of this is the repairs. So anytime a driver has a pit stop that goes over your assumption time, so I've got 18 seconds as my assumption, anytime they spend in their pit box above 18 seconds will accumulate into their repairs total. So if we switch over to that, we can see we've only had a handful of drivers make significant repairs. Kiernan has the most. You can get in some races, especially if you run a league with no fast repairs, you're going to see this up around 6-7 minutes for some people. And in this race, there's really not much of a narrative here. The people who have made repairs aren't running well on the whole at the moment. But every now and then you'll see a race that you'll pull this up and there'll be one diamond in the rough of someone who's made 3 minutes of repairs and is running in the top 5. And that is a perfect narrative for your broadcast to say, look how well, so-and-so has rebounded after making all these repairs over the course of the race, has gotten back on the lead lap, gotten back into the top 5, et cetera, et cetera. So I just love these 2 plugins here to really keep you informed on drivers, long-term strategy if you haven't been able to pay attention to all of them and remember it in your head. Otherwise, this is a pretty simple tool. Like I said, it just relies on these assumption numbers. And if you get those numbers right, this data is really helpful. If you get these numbers wrong, it's not there. A perfect example I'll share with you is a couple, when I first started using this, I was using 7 seconds as my fuel-only assumption number because that worked for Cup. And I broadcast an Xfinity race, and I'd pull this up, and it would just say that everyone took 2 tires, and or vice versa. And I just knew that wasn't right. I had just watched them pit and go fuel only. And so I came in and changed this from 7 to 8 because I realized in the Xfinity cars at that track, a fuel only stop was 7.5 seconds where I thought it would always be under 7. But I can change it on the fly as I'm looking at this. Let's take an example. So if I change this repairs number to 50, you can see now all of the people that were labeled as having a repair stop, it switches to 4 tires. And so you can correct this in race as you see it. If you just happen to observe a pit stop and that person had, 2 tires or 4 tires, but the plugin is labeling them as something different, just come in here and update the numbers. Easy peasy. So I hope you guys really enjoy this one. This is one of the first ones I released, and it gets probably the most use on my own broadcast. It's just really helpful to keep you informed on the narratives, and it's not super complicated. As always, it has styling options in the styling tab. You can use some of the built-in CDSN themes, like the Fox Sports theme or the Cyberpunk style. Those are all work for this plugin, as well as the results and all the other ones. So hope you guys enjoy.